The sky over Cock High at year's end remained overcast and gray, mirroring the mood of the elderly at life's twilight. A light drizzle had persisted since morning, and the sea breeze swept through the dry earthen walls, leaving Mr. Mao's small house perpetually damp and cold. The tarp covering the roof flapped all day, and the wind whispered softly, like someone moaning in a dark corner. This house, located near the edge of the village, where few people passed, was where old Mrs. Ban, Mr. Mao's mother, had been lying in a stupor for nearly 3 months after a severe fever. Mrs. Ban had once been a strong-willed woman, toiling her whole life to raise her children, living a reclusive life, never fond of gatherings or gossip like other elderly women in the village. People rumored that she was once the daughter of a prominent family. But since marrying a poor carpenter and giving birth to Mr. Mao, she had severed ties with her past, never mentioning it again. Mr. Mao's family was dirt poor. He and his wife worked as hired laborers around the area, sometimes having enough to eat, sometimes not. Their 4 young children grew up amidst the smell of wood smoke, rice with fish sauce, and their grandmother's dry cough. Poverty clung to them like moss on a wall, no matter how hard they scraped. It wouldn't come off. For the past 3 months, Mrs. Ban had lain motionless. The village doctor had visited and shook his head, saying she was too weak, her organs failing, yet she continued to breathe steadily, though at times her pulse seemed to fade. The family had no money for treatment, nor anything valuable to pawn, so they resigned themselves to waiting. That evening, darkness fell earlier than usual. The rain continued, drizzling and cold. In the small kitchen, the whole family gathered around a pot of boiled sweet potatoes, a meager dinner as always. Everyone avoided mentioning the room where Mrs. Ban lay. They all knew she might not make it through the night. Suddenly, a hoarse voice called from the room, "Senator, where's little Sen?" The family froze. 7-year-old Senator, the granddaughter, who had been tending the fire, hurried into the room and knelt beside the bed. "I'm here, Grandma. Did you call me?" Mrs. Ban slowly opened her eyes. Her clouded eyes, which seemed devoid of sight, now gleamed with an unusual light. Her voice was faint, trembling like a breath escaping through an old door. "Tonight, guests will come. Remember to open the door for them. Don't let anyone stand outside, it's cold." With that, her breathing slowed and ceased. Mrs. Ban had passed, as gently as a dry leaf falling from a branch in the wind. No one understood who the guests were, but her final words sent chills through everyone. In the village, it was said that when someone about to die spoke ambiguously, it meant they had unfinished business in the mortal world. An altar was hastily set up that night. An old memorial photo, a candle, and a few burning incense sticks. There was no coffin, no mourning clothes. The family could only wrap her in an old white cloth and place her on the bamboo bed in the room. The rain continued. Around 2 in the morning, after the family had dozed off following a long night of tears, a knocking sound echoed. Knock, knock, knock. Mr. Mao jolted awake. Mrs. Wah also sat up groggily. "Who is it, knocking at this hour?" The house fell silent. No one dared breathe heavily. The knocking sounded again, 3 steady knocks as before. Mr. Mao, trembling, grabbed the oil lamp and stepped out. His hands were ice cold. The wooden door creaked as it opened. No one was there, only rain, and footprints. Human footprints, clearly imprinted on the wet ground, leading from the gate to the doorstep. Stopping right at the door, no footprints led away. Mr. Mao swallowed hard, gripping the lamp tightly. The scent of incense from Mrs. Ban's altar wafted over. He turned to look. The candle still flickered, but the white cloth covering the memorial photo was gently swaying, even though the window was closed. Upstairs, little Sen suddenly woke up screaming. She clung tightly to her mother. "Grandma! Grandma was standing by my bed, she's so cold." The whole family turned pale. Mr. Mao carried his daughter downstairs, holding her close, unable to utter a word. Outside, the wind rose again, carrying with it a sound, like a whisper. The next morning, as Mr. Mao swept the yard, He found several dried mint sprigs tied with banana fiber at the doorstep. These were items Mrs. Ban often used to ward off evil, but no one in the family had touched them for months. He stood in silence. His mother's last words echoed in his mind. "Tonight, guests will come. Remember to open the door for them. Don't let anyone stand outside, it's cold." As he gathered the mint to bring inside, little Sen called out, "Dad, Grandma left this." On the pillow where Mrs. Ban had lain was a small piece of paper, folded into quarters. Inside, in shaky handwriting, "If one day you see the candle extinguished without wind, don't ask why. Hold a ceremony for the one who stood at the door." Mr. Mao froze. Images from the previous night flooded back: the swaying cloth, muddy footprints, the knocking, and his daughter's frightened eyes. A nameless unease stirred within him. Could it be his mother still had something left unsaid? Or had the guest she mentioned not yet departed? The following morning, after discovering ashes forming a curved shape resembling footprints turning away, Mr. Mao stood silently for a long time. The incense stick placed at the door had burned out, leaving a faint wisp of smoke dissipating into the morning mist. The feeling of something unfinished clung to him, like a damp blanket pressing on his chest upon waking in the winter night. He didn't tell his wife and children about the ashes and footprints. He simply wiped the memorial photo, lit a new incense stick, and sat gazing at his mother's portrait for a long time. In that photo, Mrs. Ban's eyes seemed to still look toward the door, as if waiting for someone yet to arrive. That afternoon, Mr. Mao decided to visit the village pagoda. Tin Kwang Pagoda sat atop a hill at the village's end. The head monk had chanted prayers for his wife's soul the previous year. When Mr. Mao recounted the events, the knocking, muddy footprints, the extinguished candle, and his mother's note, the monk merely closed his eyes and slowly nodded. Some souls don't wish to leave, not out of vengeance, but because they still care for their descendants. Perhaps she wants to convey something. You should chant prayers for 3 nights to guide her spirit. And remember, don't let the candle go out. Each time it does, she wants to tell you something. Mr. Mao clasped his hands and softly replied. After 3 nights of chanting, peace seemed to return to Mr. Mao's house. There were no more knocks at the door, no more muddy footprints, and the candle no longer went out in the middle of the night. But deep down, he still felt something unfinished. As if his mother, old Mrs. Ban, hadn't truly left, as if some ending had yet to be completed. On the 4th morning, just as the sun broke through, Mrs. Wah went to the well behind the house to fetch water. The old brick well had been built since the days of their great-grandparents, and its water had always been clear and cool. But today, something felt off. On the well's edge sat an old wooden comb, the kind Mrs. Ban used to use. A few strands of gray hair clung to it, fluttering slightly in the breeze. Mrs. Wah picked it up, her heart tightening. No one in the house had left it there. Let alone, the old woman was already gone. She told her husband. Mr. Mao said nothing, so silent, it frightened her. Maybe she still has something left unresolved? She asked cautiously. Mr. Mao shook his head, but then his gaze drifted toward the edge of the yard, where the old cotton tree stood, the very spot where Mrs. Ban used to sit alone during twilight. Tonight, I'll sit there and watch, he said, more to himself than anyone else. Night fell. A thin crescent moon lay hidden behind drifting clouds. Mr. Mao put on a warm jacket, grabbed his flashlight, and sat by the base of the cotton tree, just a few steps from the well. The air was eerily still. Only the chirping of crickets and the wind rustling through the bamboo fence could be heard. Near midnight, slow, heavy footsteps echoed from the dirt path leading to the well. Mr. Mao held his breath. His flashlight had gone out without warning. Despite fresh batteries, he peered ahead. A shadowy figure hovered near the well. He couldn't see the face, only a fluttering white robe. Then, the figure leaned forward, as if looking into the water like a mirror. "Mother, is that you?" he asked, his voice trembling on the verge of tears. The white figure paused, slowly turned, but instead of answering, she raised a finger to her lips, signaling silence, then faded into the darkness. The next morning, he recounted everything. The whole family was stunned. Little Sen was so frightened she refused to go into the kitchen alone. Villagers were divided, some doubtful, others not, but old man Hua, a longtime farmer, just sighed. I told you, Mrs. Ban wasn't just any old woman. When she was young, she once led the sacred ritual to lock the village shrine. You think just anyone could do that? Mr. Mao was shocked. Apparently, in her youth, his mother had been the guardian of the Quan Am shrine at the village's entrance. Each year, only one person was chosen to lock the shrine after the celebration. That person had to have a pure heart, free of envy, and Mrs. Ban had performed that role for 10 years straight. Suddenly, he realized, since his mother passed, no one had offered incense at the shrine. Could that be what still troubled her? That afternoon, Mr. Mao went to the market and bought joss paper, incense sticks, and some fruit. He quietly brought them to the Quan Am shrine. The gate was covered in dry leaves, the altar dusty, but the moment he set down the offerings, a gentle breeze passed through, not cold, but carrying the faint scent of now blossoms, just like the scent on his mother's clothes. He lit the incense, bowed 3 times, and prayed softly. If there's anything left undone, please let me know. That night, he dreamt of Mrs. Ban. She sat on the porch, brushing her hair with her old wooden comb, eyes gazing into the distance. She said nothing, just nodded, then slowly raised a hand, pointing toward the shrine. When he awoke, a weight lifted from his chest. He knew his mother was finally at peace. But from then on, he made it a habit to burn incense at the shrine every 1st and 15th day of the lunar month. There were no more knocks, no more white shadows, though from time to time, he'd still catch the scent of now drifting through the yard on rainy nights. Since the night Mrs. Ban appeared by the well and the visit to the shrine, everything seemed calm again. No more strange visitors in the night, no more fluttering robes at the doorstep. But in Mr. Mao's heart, her only son, there remained a weight. Something still left unsaid, a worry lingering like a sentence cut off in the wind, making him restless each time the night returned. And then, one rainy night, in a half-sleeping dream, he saw her again, but this time was different. She sat beside the old bamboo table, once used for drying herbs picked from the hill. On the table lay a stack of yellow paper, and beside it, an old cracked ceramic jar. She didn't look at him, just gently smoothed the papers and whispered, "There's still one thing unfinished. Remember, don't let the vow fade away with the wind and rain." Then the dream dissolved. When he woke, his back was drenched in sweat, and her words still echoed in his ears. What vow? What yellow paper? He kept asking himself until he couldn't even eat breakfast. Around noon, while tidying the altar room, he accidentally knocked loose a wooden plank by the wall. Behind the rotting bamboo slats was a hidden compartment, old and nearly forgotten. Inside was a cracked ceramic jar, exactly like in the dream. He opened it and found a rolled-up yellowed paper. His mother's handwriting, shaky but clear, filled the page. "If one day you find this letter, I am likely no longer here. I beg you, please return the item I once kept, to the family of Mr. Lee in the old Tri Ku hamlet. Don't carry this burden forward. This is not something that should pass to a third person. I held it for a lifetime. Please don't keep it any longer." His hands trembled as he unrolled the next part. Inside was a small red cloth wrapping a silver hairpin engraved with ancient patterns. He told his wife. Mrs. Hua shuddered. "Mr. Lee? Which Mr. Lee? Tri Ku has been abandoned for decades. When I was little, I heard there was a murder there." Mr. Mao fell into deep thought. Then he went to the commune office to check old family registries. After asking around, he finally met an old man named Tong, who used to live in Tri Ku. The moment he heard Mrs. Ban's name, the man nodded slowly. Mrs. Ban, she was the only one who survived the fire that destroyed the Lee family home. It was set ablaze one night. Rumor said it was all because of a valuable item everyone wanted. And she was the one who picked up that silver hairpin. Mr. Mao froze. He never imagined his mother had been a living witness to something so serious. That night, he couldn't sleep. He placed the silver hairpin on the altar. lit 3 incense sticks, and bowed deeply. "Mother, if this object shouldn't be kept, I will return it. Please rest in peace." When the incense burned halfway, the flames suddenly surged and extinguished, all on their own. No wind, no one near. Mrs. Wah saw it too. She clutched his hand, eyes shimmering. "She agrees. Dear, we should take it back." The next morning, Mr. Mao brought the hairpin, the old letter, and some incense to Tri Ku, now just moss-covered foundations and vines. In the silent clearing, he placed the hairpin on a cracked brick, scattered ash and incense, and bowed low. As he rose, a strange gust of wind swept through, leaves rustling violently, and within that wind, he heard it, a soft, fleeting laugh of an old woman. That night, for the first time in many days, Mr. Mao slept soundly. In his dream, he saw Mrs. Ban again, but this time, she didn't turn away. She smiled gently, nodded once, then walked into the light at the end of a dirt path, without looking back. A week after Mr. Mao returned the silver hairpin to the ruins of the Li family house in Tri Ku hamlet. The atmosphere in his home felt noticeably lighter. There were no more strange winds, no more heavy dreams, but peace didn't last for long. On the very first day of the lunar month, while the family was preparing offerings for the ancestral altar, little Sen, the 7-year-old granddaughter, stood silently in front of Mrs. Ban's memorial photo for a long time. Her face darkened suddenly. Then, while the others were in the kitchen fetching fire, she whispered, "Grandma didn't leave. She's still standing in the kitchen corner. She told me not to let anyone touch the ash jar." Mrs. Wah turned around, startled. "What did you say, Sen? Which grandma?" The child didn't answer, her eyes still fixed on a shadowy corner of the kitchen. It was the corner where Mrs. Ban used to keep the jar of incense ash, the kind saved to light the next stick. But that jar had been emptied and discarded after the prayer ceremony. And yet, the girl mentioned it. From that day on, Sen became strange. By day, she remained as obedient as ever. But at night, as soon as she lay in bed, she would begin murmuring to herself, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying. One night, while dozing off, Mrs. Wah jolted awake to the sound of the girl shouting, "Grandma, Grandma, please don't pull my hand anymore. I'm so tired." Mr. Mao rushed to turn on the light. Sen was drenched in sweat. Her arm stretched out as if someone was tugging on it. They shook her for a long time before she slowly woke up. The next morning, Mr. Mao invited Mr. Tong, an old man well versed in local customs and spiritual matters, to come over. After listening to the full story, Mr. Tong only sighed deeply. When the elderly pass but their hearts are still unsettled, they often come to children to send messages. Perhaps, Mrs. Ban didn't want anyone to disturb that ash jar. "Where exactly did you dispose of it?" Mrs. Wah folded her hands and answered, I threw it out behind the house, next to the old guava tree." Mr. Tong was silent for a long moment, then said slowly, "That shouldn't have been discarded carelessly. If it was incense ash from worship and kept where she often sat for years, it would have gathered spiritual energy. Throwing it away without ritual easily disturbs the spirit." That afternoon, Mr. Mao and Mr. Tong went to the back garden, to the base of the guava tree. Beneath the fallen leaves and wild grass, the soil where the ash was dumped had turned an oddly cold shade of gray. Mr. Tong brought out ginger wine, aloes wood ash, and wormwood incense. He offered prayers, murmuring, "If this is the spirit of one who once lived here, please forgive the thoughtlessness of your descendants. We now sincerely make amends and hope for peace." That night, Sen slept soundly. No more murmurs, no more crying. But, around midnight, when Mrs. Wah got up for a drink of water, she noticed the back door slightly ajar. A soft breeze drifted in. Outside, on the old rattan chair, sat the silhouette of someone, hunched, hair silver, holding a teacup, exactly the way Mrs. Ban used to sit every evening. Mrs. Wah wanted to scream, but her throat locked up. The figure just sat there silently, then slowly faded into the thin mist. The next morning, she told Mr. Mao. They both sat in silence. Finally, she whispered, Maybe she just wanted to sit where she used to. Not trying to scare us. Mr. Mao nodded, then signaled his wife to gather all of Mrs. Ban's remaining belongings, her scarf, clothes, teapot, small wooden box. All were cleaned and neatly placed into a small chest, then set beside the altar. That evening, they prepared a simple meal and placed a warm teacup next to Mrs. Ban's photo. Mr. Mao softly prayed, "Mother, I don't know what's still troubling you, but if you still care for your children and grandchildren, please grant us a peaceful night's sleep." In that quiet moment, the candle didn't flicker, didn't flare up, it burned steadily, gently, warmly. The whole family felt their hearts calm. That night, for the first time in many days, there were no more laughs, no more cries, but just before dawn, Sen dreamt of Mrs. Ban approaching her bedside, leaning down to kiss her forehead, and whispering, "Be good, Grandma is really leaving now." From the night Sen saw Mrs. Ban kiss her forehead and say goodbye, it felt like a knot had finally been untied in the Mao household. No more dream whispers, no more shadows in the yard. The old rattan chair remained, but no one felt heavy-hearted anymore. Mrs. Hua began replanting vegetable beds in the garden, and the children laughed again. But Mr. Mao was different. After everything, there remained an emptiness he couldn't name, a feeling like he still owed his mother something. Some nights, he would sit by the charcoal stove, reminiscing about the years Mrs. Ban struggled to raise him, meals of rice mixed with sweet potatoes, shirts patched with every careful stitch. Looking up at the altar, he whispered, "Mother, if you've truly gone, please let me see you one more time in a dream, just once." That night, the weather turned cold. Misty rain drifted over the moss-covered roof. In a restless sleep, he dreamt he was a child again. The old thatched house stood crooked, and Mrs. Ban was crouched by the fire, her back turned. In her hand was a soot-covered iron pot, smoke stinging his eyes. "Mother," he called out. She turned around. It was the same face, but her eyes looked wearier, sadder, older. She stared at him, said nothing, and reached out her hand. In her thin palm was a small cloth bundle. Inside, a child's shirt, faded, its edges worn thin. I kept it. Please burn it, don't let anyone else see it," she said. Then turned and walked into the mist. He woke with a jolt. His heart pounded. A child's shirt? He couldn't remember his mother ever keeping something like that. But the words from the dream were clear. The next morning, he returned to the old room where Mrs. Ban had stayed. He searched the wooden chest at the head of the bed, something no one had opened in ages. At the very bottom, wrapped in old brown cloth, was an infant's shirt, yellowed with age, with faint red thread embroidered with the name, Thien Tam. Mrs. Hua looked confused. "Honey, whose is this?" Mr. Mao shook his head. In his memory, no child in the family had that name. He brought the shirt to the altar, lit incense, then decided to visit Master Tin at the Tin Quang Temple. The monk examined it carefully and said thoughtfully, "Thien Tam is a Dharma name. This shirt likely belonged to a child who passed early, or had their identity hidden. If your mother kept it all her life, perhaps there was a regret she never voiced." Mr. Mao stood stunned. Could his mother have lost a child? Or raised one she couldn't keep? Everything now was only speculation. But he knew one thing for certain. This shirt needed to be sent off like a soul. That night, he prepared a vegetarian offering, lit a lamp, and laid the shirt on a clean mat, scattering rice and salt around it. He prayed, "If this was a child who once stayed in this house, please leave gently and go peacefully. If my mother once quietly loved you, please don't blame her." As the shirt burned in fragrant smoke, the flames suddenly rose higher than expected. On the wall, the light cast shadows of two people, one big, one small, holding hands, then slowly faded. That night, Mr. Mao slept deeply. In his dream, Mrs. Ban stood beneath the guava tree, holding the child in her arms, smiling. "I can go now, my child. Now, no one has to wait for anyone anymore." Ban muon min viet teep fan sao hoak lam ban rut gon de doc bang ai voice kong. One late afternoon at the end of the month, when the sun had softened and the breeze from the sea began to cool the air. Mr. Mao was tidying up the small shed at the back of the garden, the place where Mrs. Ban used to store old belongings. Ever since the incident with the infant's shirt, he felt a growing urge to learn more about his mother's past, the quiet woman who had spent her life carrying secrets she never spoke aloud. While rummaging through an old wooden chest, he discovered a bundle of old photographs. The paper was brittle, the photo edges worn and torn with time. They were black and white pictures from the French colonial era. One of them made him freeze. It was a photo of a young Mrs. Ban standing beside an unfamiliar woman. They held hands in a way that felt deeply personal. On the back, written in violet ink, were the words, Ban, Nhan, 1953, a promise under the magnolia tree. He brought the photo home and showed it to his wife, Mrs. Hua. She studied it for a while and then shook her head. I've never heard her mention anyone named Nhan. But that woman's face, she kind of looks like you. Mr. Mao was startled, placing the photo beside the mirror. He compared it. Indeed, the woman's gaze bore an uncanny resemblance to his own. That night, he told Mr. Tong about it. After listening, the old man simply furrowed his brow. There was once a woman named Nhan, the daughter of a high official, who ran away to become a nun at Tin Quang Pagoda. Then she mysteriously disappeared. Some say she was taken back home and forced into marriage. Others say she fell ill and passed away in the pagoda. If Mrs. Ban was involved, things must have been complicated. Mr. Mao felt uneasy. That night, tossing and turning, he dreamed again. In the dream, Mrs. Ban sat at a table, placed the photograph down, and said, "She was the only person I ever truly trusted, but I couldn't keep my promise. Please take this photo back to where I once made that vow, beneath the magnolia tree behind the pagoda." The next morning, he went to Tin Quang Pagoda. The magnolia tree was still there, tall, casting a wide shadow. Behind it was a mossy stone wall, once a private meeting place. He gently dug into the soil beneath the tree, placed the photo inside, covered it with earth, lit an incense stick, and whispered, "Mother, I don't know what promises you made to her, but I've fulfilled it on your behalf." From that day, he dreamt once more, but this time, not of Mrs. Ban. It was the woman from the photo, Ms. Nhan, wearing a white ao dai, long hair flowing, standing in front of an old house, smiling softly and nodding gently. Behind her, Mrs. Ban approached, no longer in her modest daily clothes, but wearing a brown robe, holding prayer beads, giving him one final look. "Thank you, my son, I've fulfilled my promise." After placing the photo beneath the magnolia tree, Mr. Mao felt lighter. The dreams became less frequent. He no longer saw Mrs. Ban or Ms. Nhan. And yet, a quiet unease lingered in his heart, like something remained untold. One day, near the end of the season, just as the drizzle began and rainwater leaked through the roof, Mr. Mao climbed up to replace a few broken tiles. As he removed the tiles near the left edge of the eaves, he discovered a small cloth pouch wedged tightly against the wooden beam, tied carefully with an old nylon string. Inside was a sheet of paper, yellowed with age, the ink faded and smudged, but he could still recognize the familiar handwriting, his mother's. "If you're reading this, I am likely no longer in this world. I don't ask for your forgiveness, only that you understand. Some children are born never to be called sons, yet I once loved them as if they were my own flesh and blood." Beneath that line was a name written in red ink, Li Van Dui. Mr. Mao sat there in shock. The name meant nothing to him. He flipped the paper over, and found a slanted line scribbled across the back. "Send the child toward the sea." When the southern wind arrives in early September, he decided to visit Master Tin at the pagoda once more. After reading the letter, the monk stayed silent for a long while before asking, "Did Mrs. Ban ever go to the sea?" "No," Mr. Mao shook his head. "But she once mentioned briefly that she lived for a short time in Fa Lai, near where the river meets the sea." Master Tin nodded slowly. Perhaps the child was sent back there. In old traditions, the southern wind at the start of September signaled separation. It could have been when she said goodbye, or when she began to wait. The story weighed heavily on Mr. Mao's heart. He told his wife, and together they decided to travel back to the coastal area she had once lived. Packing up, they made the journey to Pha Lai, a coastal commune. After much inquiry, they learned of a man named Dewey, in his early 50s. Once an orphan raised by the local pagoda, he had since moved south, but still sent offerings back to the temple every year, on the full moon of the 9th lunar month. Upon hearing that, Mr. Mao shivered. The full moon in September. That was exactly when the southern wind arrives, as mentioned in the letter. Returning to their village, Mr. Mao lit incense at Mrs. Ban's altar. This time, he didn't plead, didn't ask anything, he simply prayed. "Mother, I know now. He's still alive, and he's doing well. You may rest in peace." That evening, a soft wind rose. The banana leaves in the garden turned upward. On the altar, the candle burned steadily, brighter than usual. There were no strange signs. But in his sleep, Mr. Mao dreamt of Mrs. Ban once again, standing behind a row of coconut trees, her gaze toward the sea, holding a worn silk scarf in her hand. She didn't turn back, she simply walked away, her steps light, her back no longer hunched. And in that fleeting moment, the wind whispered like a lullaby from long ago. "I'm leaving now, my child, this time. I'm really going." After returning from the coastal town of Pha Lai, everything in Mr. Mao's home became strangely peaceful. The candle on Mrs. Ban's altar burned steadily every full moon night, filling the room with the warm scent of incense, and the air itself seemed lighter. But it was this prolonged peace that made Mr. Mao feel like it still wasn't the end. One rainy morning, while sorting through his mother's old belongings, he accidentally discovered a small wooden box hidden behind the central house pillar, the very spot where Mrs. Ban used to sit and mend clothes. The box was old, secured with a tiny lock that had long since lost its key. It took him nearly the whole morning to pry it open. Inside was a worn, earth-brown handkerchief, wrapped around something heavy enough to fit in his palm, a silver ring. There was no gemstone on it, but etched on the inside band were tiny letters, T.L. Ban, 1960. He stood frozen. It was the first time he realized his mother had once kept something so private. Who was T.L.? What happened in 1960? And why had she hidden it away so carefully? That evening, he brought the ring to Mr. Tong. The old man looked at it and sighed. Back then, there was a man named Tam Lu, smart, kind, well-respected. I heard he loved Mrs. Ban since their youth. But he was drafted, then went missing during the war. She never married anyone else after he left. Mr. Mao told his wife. Mrs. Hua held the ring for a long time before saying softly, "Maybe that was a love she carried all her life. One that never came to be. That's why she never spoke of it." That night, Mr. Mao placed the ring on the altar. Beside his mother's portrait, he lit incense and prayed. "Mother, if this was something you couldn't keep in the open, then let me return it to you properly. You've held on to that love your whole life, now please accept it again, not in secret." That night, the wind rose outside, but inside the house, it felt strangely warm. While half asleep, he heard a soft knock on the altar table. When he opened his eyes, the candle flame was dancing, brighter than usual, as if moving with someone's breath. And then he saw her, in a dream, sitting by the door, holding the silver ring. This time, her smile was gentler than ever before. "You've done it all, my son. I have no more regrets. After I'm gone, live true to your own heart. All right?" The next morning, the ring still sat on the altar, but it gleamed, as if freshly polished, no longer tarnished like the day before. Mr. Mao knew his mother had finally let go of all that weighed on her heart. Since that final dream, her soft smile and last words, Mr. Mao knew that everything his mother had carried silently throughout her life, he had slowly uncovered. Layer by layer, the days that followed moved slowly. The once cold and shadowy house now felt brighter, warmer. The children laughed and played, and Mrs. Hua planted new rows of mustard greens and basil along the pond's edge. Mr. Mao spent time carefully organizing every item his mother left behind: old photos, faded notes, worn handkerchiefs, He placed them neatly in a small wooden chest at the foot of her altar. A corner of memory, kept safe and still. But one early spring afternoon, while the children played in the yard and the misty rain had just cleared, little Sen came running inside. In her hands was a handful of fresh green grass, and she whispered to her mother, "Mom, Grandma called me. She's sitting by the gate. She said don't let the grass grow too tall. She can't see the way home." Mrs. Wah shivered slightly and looked toward the yard. At the gate was a small patch of soft new grass, the kind that grows after Tet. So familiar and ordinary, but her daughter's words cracked the gentle afternoon open with an odd chill. Mr. Mao stepped outside, running his hand over the old wooden gate. Sure enough, the grass had grown tall, reaching nearly to his knees. When Mrs. Ban was alive, she often sat there in the late afternoons, gazing into the distance down the village path. He picked up a hoe and began clearing the grass. But as he turned over a patch of soil, he discovered a small, flat stone with faintly carved words. "Don't forget the place where Mother once sat." His chest tightened. Mrs. Wah stood behind him, her voice trembling. Maybe this was her final message, left just for us. He restored the old bamboo chair, cleaned the stone, and placed a small incense bowl beside it. From that day on, each afternoon, he would sit there for a while, watching the children play, watching the sunlight stretch across the squash trellis, and quietly say to his mother, "Mother, I've cleared the path now. No more tall grass hiding it. If you come by, please feel free to rest." One evening, as Sen returned home from school, she casually said, "Grandma sat on that chair yesterday." She smiled. She said, "Every life needs someone to clear the grass, so we remember how to get home." Mr. Mao looked at his daughter, then at the sky darkening in the distance. His heart felt unexpectedly warm. Not frightened, not heavy, just a gentle peace, like the new grass growing by the gate. That night, he wrote a few lines and placed them on his mother's altar. "Mother, if there truly is another world after this one, I hope you are at ease, like the wind gliding across the village fields. Thank you for staying with us so long, and thank you for finally leaving so gently." A soft breeze stirred, the candle flame flickered, nothing strange happened, but everyone knew she had returned, one last time. Just when it seemed everything had come to a close after Mrs. Ban had finally found peace, something strange happened that winter. While repairing the section of earthen wall that had collapsed, Mr. Mao and his eldest son discovered a hollow behind the old bricks, like someone had once deliberately created the space and left something there. Inside was a small cloth pouch, tightly bound with jute string and multiple knots. When they opened it, Mr. Mao found a decaying notebook, its pages browned with age. The handwriting inside was his mother's, Mrs. Ban's, recording dreams she'd had. Moments when she felt someone whispering in her ear at midnight, or when she was alone lighting incense. One entry read, "I don't know who the woman standing by the well is, but she's always crying, holding an old photograph, and calling me sister. I never dared to tell anyone. Perhaps she's blaming me for having lived all this time without ever mentioning her again." His hands trembled. Could it be that Nyan, the woman from the old photograph, was not just a friend, but a forgotten memory? Or perhaps a piece of the past his mother had deliberately buried? Reading on, he found, "She and I once promised, whoever passed first, the other would keep the keepsake until the end of life. But I faltered. I buried the photo under the magnolia tree, and kept quiet ever since." Mr. Mao gently closed the notebook and placed it on her altar. He lit an incense stick and looked out the window, where the magnolia tree was now blooming with its first white flowers of the season. That night, he dreamed of a woman in a traditional ao dai, her hair tied up high, standing beside Mrs. Ban. The two said nothing, simply holding hands as they walked under a row of green bamboo. Their steps light as they passed through the village gate, now veiled in mist. It was a serene dream, haunting in its quietness. Not frightening, but so moving that he woke with tears in his eyes. The next morning, he carefully recorded everything in his own journal, not to forget, not to hide, but to leave for his children. A story meant to be remembered, passed down like a part of the home itself. That afternoon, little Sen sat under the porch playing with dirt, then looked up and softly said, "Dad, Grandma and another lady just walked across the yard. They were holding hands. Their silver hair was so pretty." Mr. Mao only nodded. He asked nothing. He explained nothing. He simply went inside, poured a cup of hot tea, and placed it on the altar. Then he whispered, "Mother, go peacefully. Everything you kept, I understand now." On the first night of December, the wind blew hard through the beetle trees behind the house. The cold hadn't fully arrived yet, but it was enough for the elderly to tuck their hands into their sleeves and the children to curl up under their worn-out quilts. Mr. Mao's house still glowed with warm light like always. But that night, just after he'd placed a kettle on the charcoal stove, he heard a strange sound, distant yet clear. Keng, keng, a small bell ringing steadily. Deeply, he looked out toward the gate. No one was there. A soft wind stirred. The candle on the altar suddenly flickered, swaying in a way that wasn't natural. Mrs. Wah stepped out, holding her wool scarf. "Did you hear that? That bell? It sounds exactly like the bell at Tin Quang Pagoda. But who would be ringing it at this hour?" Mr. Mao didn't answer. He slowly walked into the yard, his eyes fixed in the direction of the pagoda. A thin fog crawled along the ground, like a silver cloth spread across the path. A memory from his childhood surfaced. His mother once said, when someone passed away but still had unfinished business, they wouldn't remain silent. They would call, in ways only family could recognize. That night, the bell rang 3 times, each time exactly 1 watch of the night apart. Distant, but unmistakable. Near dawn, he dreamt of Mrs. Ban sitting before the pagoda, holding the bell striker in her hand, her eyes filled with sorrow. She said, "I wasn't calling anyone. I rang the bell for the departed, because they called me." The next morning, Mr. Mao went to the pagoda. Master Tin met him at the door. As if already expecting him, he handed over a slip of paper that had been slid under the sanctuary door at midnight. No one knew who had left it. On it was a single line. "The keeper of the vow has rung the bell 3 times. Let the one who failed return to the place where life began." Mr. Mao was speechless. One late afternoon, nearing the year's end, he walked to the old cemetery behind the village where his great-grandparents were buried. Amid the tall grass, he found a small, nameless grave, no marker. Just moss-covered stone, lying askew between 2 mounds. Beside it was a piece of worn red cloth, exactly the kind his mother used for wrapping ash bundles. He brushed away the fallen leaves, lit an incense stick. The wind blew strong, but the incense flame held. As he bent down, a voice whispered in his ear, soft, distant, uncertain if real or a dream. "Thank you for remembering. The one who failed was not her, but the one who refused to acknowledge their own blood." That night, back at home, Mr. Mao wrote a single line in his notebook. "There are things my mother never said, not because she meant to hide them, but because they hurt too much to speak aloud." Sen slept peacefully that night. Before falling asleep, she told him, "Grandma didn't go anywhere today. She sat in the kitchen, chopping firewood. She even smiled at me. She said, 'This tent will be warm. No one needs to go far anymore.'" Mr. Mao nodded. No need to explain, no need to fear, because the bell that night was her final farewell. At the end of the 12th lunar month, the village of Kok Hai held its annual temple offering ceremony, a tradition passed down since the time of the great-grandfathers to pray for peace. Bid farewell to the old year, and welcome the new one. This year, the villagers asked Mr. Mao to take care of the cleaning and preparations. Since his mother passed, he had lived slower, gentler, and had come to be trusted for spiritual matters. The ceremony was held early in the morning on the 23rd of the 12th month, the day of the kitchen god's departure. In the courtyard, adults quietly arranged offerings while children ran and laughed nearby. Everything seemed calm, until Mr. Mao overheard a little girl whisper to her friend, "That old lady's been sitting inside the temple for a while now. Wearing a long brown robe, but she never turns around. She looks just like Sen's grandma." A chill ran down his spine. A strange feeling stirred inside him. He hurried into the inner chamber. where the ancestral tablets of the village elders were kept. The oil lamp's light flickered across the damp, mossy walls. No one was there, but on the stone step before the altar, there was a patch of dust freshly cleared. As if someone had just been sitting there. He stood silently, then lit an incense stick, placed it in the censer, and whispered, "If you still have something left unsaid, Mother, I'm here to listen." That night, after everyone had left the temple, Mr. Mao stayed behind to tend the altar fire. Around 2 in the morning, as gusts of wind howled stronger, a shadow appeared by the temple's porch. It was Mrs. Ban, but this time, she didn't look tired. She held a bundle of burned incense in her hands, and her eyes shone with something soft and peaceful. "Mother, I thought you'd already gone," he whispered, unsure if he was awake or dreaming. She stepped forward, placed the bundle on the ancestral altar, and softly replied, "There are places only those who owe a debt of gratitude may return to offer incense. This village once kept me when no one else believed. I've come only to offer thanks one last time." Then she turned and began to walk away from the sanctuary. At the doorway, she paused and looked back with a gentle smile. "After tonight, I truly won't return again." The next morning, the villagers discovered a bundle of half-burned incense placed inside the ancestral altar censer. No one could explain it, but everyone felt a strange lightness in their hearts. Mr. Mao returned home, boiled a pot of tea, and set it beside his mother's photo. That day, the sky above Cock High was crystal clear. Birds chirped from the rooftop, and in the yard, the fresh green grass glistened as if winter had never come. After the offering ceremony, the whole village came alive. Homes repaired broken tiles, plastered cracked walls, and laid rice paper out in the sun to prepare for Tet. Mr. Mao's family was no exception, but just as preparations for the first batch of Bon Chung began, a stranger appeared at the gate, bringing everything to a halt. He was a middle-aged man, clothes worn and dusty, rubber sandals on his feet, and a faded cloth bag in hand. He stood quietly for a long time under the old lychee tree, near the wall where Mrs. Ban used to sit, ever since her passing. No one had sat there. The neighborhood kids whispered, "He's strange, doesn't talk, just stands there staring at the house. Doesn't even blink." Mrs. Wah came out to ask who he was. He simply bowed his head and said, voice as soft as wind passing through leaves, "I'd like to light an incense stick for Mrs. Ban. I once owed her an apology." Upon hearing his mother's name, Mr. Mao stepped out, his hands still dusted with rice flour. The man looked up, and there was something oddly familiar about his eyes, both distant and close. "You are?" Mr. Mao asked. He replied quietly, "My name is Vin. I was the foster son of Aunt Sao, the woman who lived next door to your mother. When I was little, I once got chased out of the yard by her for stealing fruit. But it was also her who made porridge for me when I lay sick, burning with fever under this very tree. She didn't know who I was, just left the bowl and a damp cloth, and walked away." I never forgot the look in her eyes that day. Mr. Mao's throat tightened. He didn't remember this, but he believed it. It sounded just like something his mother would do. He invited Mr. Vin into the house to light incense. As the smoke swirled, the candle on Mrs. Ban's altar suddenly flared up, then returned to its steady flame. Mr. Vin's eyes brimmed with emotion. "I've been away for decades. Maybe she knew I was coming." That night, Mr. Mao told the story to his children. Little Sen asked, "Dad, why did Grandma help someone she didn't even know and never tell anyone?" He gently stroked her hair and replied, "Because some things are complete just by doing them. No need for recognition, no need for repayment." The next day, the man left the village. But before he did, he quietly placed a branch of now flowers under the lychee tree, his mother's favorite. That night, Sen dreamed of her grandmother again. She wore a brown robe, sitting beneath the lychee tree, her hand resting on the now blossoms. She smiled and whispered, "Our garden isn't cold anymore." That January, the coastal wind swept through Cock High village with a biting chill. Some families began repairing their roofs, patching clay walls to keep out the coming rains. Mr. Mao's home was no exception. but as he climbed onto the kitchen roof to replace the old tiles, his eldest son, Tin, called down, "Dad, there's a strange piece of cloth stuffed inside the roof beam, still tied up." Mr. Mao climbed up to see. He carefully pulled it out and found a piece of deep red fabric, tightly wrapped around something firm. Inside was a strand of old, polished black wooden beads, worn smooth by time, just like the prayer beads his mother, Mrs. Ban, used to hold every afternoon. Beneath the beads was a faded scrap of paper. The ink was nearly gone, but he could still make out the words, "Don't let anyone throw away this strand. If the wind ever passes over the kitchen roof and smoke no longer rises, you'll understand." Mr. Mao stood frozen. Ever since his mother passed, he'd left the kitchen untouched, like a quiet shrine. But lately, every time they lit the stove, the smoke wouldn't rise, it just curled around under the roof. Everyone thought it was because the ceiling was too low. No one imagined his mother had left a message hidden above them. That night, he gently cleaned the prayer beads and placed them on the altar. Then he lit 3 incense sticks. The family gathered for dinner in the kitchen for the first time in months. Mrs. Wall looked at the beads, her voice catching. She used to say, "The kitchen smoke is the soul of a home. If there's no smoke, the living might as well be gone too." From that day on, Mr. Mao decided to restore the entire kitchen roof, not just to release the smoke, but to preserve the soul his mother had once guarded. While digging to rebuild part of the foundation, he discovered a round white stone wrapped in coarse cloth. Embroidered on the fabric was a single word, "Tu," which means to keep. He showed it to Mr. Tong, who trembled as he explained, "That's a guardian charm for the hearth. Long ago, your mother asked for it from the temple of the mother goddess and buried it under the kitchen. If anyone removes it, they risk spiritual offense. That's why she warned you all not to make changes carelessly." Mr. Mao bowed his head, realizing he had almost shown disrespect. He immediately held a gratitude offering, replaced the stone, and kept the kitchen's original layout, only re-roofing without disturbing the foundation. That night, the family slept to the sound of rustling wind. Little Sen dreamt of Mrs. Ban again. She was sitting by the stove, holding the prayer beads, smiling. "Thank you for keeping the kitchen for me. As long as there's a fire, the soul of the house won't drift away." The next morning, when Mr. Mao lit the stove, smoke rose high and free, just like the old days. The candle on the altar burned steadily, soft and warm like the gaze of an elder watching their children gather close. Outside, the sea breeze still blew, but this time, it didn't carry the cold. That Tet Kok Hai village buzzed with joy. Every household was busy wrapping bon chung, raising bamboo poles, and preparing their New Year's feasts. Mr. Mao's home was full of that same festive warmth. Yet amid all the celebration, he felt something hollow, like a story still unfinished. On the morning of the second day of Tet, after sweeping the yard, he decided to walk up the hill behind the village, the old site of a cemetery from the French era. Now it was just a grassy slope, with a few low mounds and a lone, gnarled jackfruit tree. No one went there anymore. People said that at night, figures could be seen walking there, only to vanish, carrying incense, guided by a quiet pull in his chest. Mr. Mao climbed the hill. When he reached the top, he noticed fresh footprints, like someone had just passed through. The wind stirred, and the scent of incense seemed to rise from the earth itself. On one small mound, he saw an oval stone with barely visible words carved into it. "Remember the departed, love the living." Next to it was an old cloth wrapped around the base of a wild grass stalk. When he unwrapped it, he froze. Inside was a letter written by his mother, on thin yellow paper once used for final messages. "If you've come to this place, I trust you understand. There are spirits with no place to return to. They remain, not out of resentment, but because they were once truly loved by the living. I once promised someone I'd return their ashes home, but war severed everything. Now I'm gone. Please, help me. This mound is the final promise." His hands trembled as he read. The slope behind him blurred through tear-filled eyes. That afternoon, he hired help to clear the overgrown hill. They reset the stone, built a bamboo canopy, and placed a simple altar, no name, no date, just a wooden plaque that read, "For the one who never made it home." That night, on the second day of Tet, the village lost power after a heavy storm. But strangely, from the hill, a soft light flickered, like a lantern swaying gently. Passers-by said they heard faint chanting carried by the wind. On the morning of the third day, the power returned. Mr. Mao shared the story with his children. After listening, little Sen smiled and said, "Last night, I dreamt of Grandma sitting on that hill. She waved at me and said, 'Tet's done. I brought someone home. Tomorrow I'll come eat bon with you.'" Mr. Mao said nothing. He just lit another stick of incense. On Mrs. Ban's altar, the smoke rose straight and clean, like there was nothing left to weigh it down. In the early days of the 7th lunar month, rain cloaked the village roads of Kokhai. The wind howled through the old tiled roofs, and heavy raindrops beat against the banana leaves, creating a haunting rhythm, one that made the elderly sigh and gave the young chills. Mr. Mao was no longer young, but since his mother passed away, he had moved more slowly, more carefully, as if to make up for all the questions he never asked, all the things he never heard. That day, while cleaning out Mrs. Ban's old bedroom, the room no one had entered for a long time, he decided to take apart the old bamboo bed frame to replace the wooden slats. And when he lifted it, he found a small wooden chest, tightly locked and wedged beneath the foot of the bed. The lock was rusted but still wrapped with a red cloth tie. He called Mrs. Wah and their son. After searching, they found the key tucked inside an old beetle box. When they opened the chest, inside was a perfectly folded, white set of clothing, an old ring of keys, and a small brown fabric-bound notebook. On the cover of the notebook, it read, "Read this only when you no longer see me in your dreams." Mr. Mao stood still. It had been almost a month since he last dreamt of his mother. No more nighttime whispers, no more silent stares from under the eaves. He opened the notebook. Inside were steady, careful lines. "There is a house at the end of the village, the home of a silversmith named Nia. They say it's haunted, but no one knows. That was once where my daughter was born. She didn't grow up in our home. Back then, women who had children without marriage were exiled from the village hall. I couldn't keep her, but I once left behind a ring of keys, hoping one day she'd return." Cold sweat ran down his back. His mother had a daughter? And he, her only son, never knew? Among the keys was one with a broken tooth, faintly marked with the number 3. At the end of the notebook, she had written, "If you truly wish to know, go to the house with the handprint on the door, on the night of the 7th full moon. But remember, don't go alone." That full moon night, Mr. Mao took Mrs. Wah, their son, and little Sen to the old house of Mr. Nia, now abandoned. Covered in moss, with the wind howling endlessly through it. On the wooden door, sure enough, there was a handprint made of black charcoal, as if someone had pressed their palm there. And time and weather had preserved it. He inserted the number 3 key into the old lock on the small back door. To their surprise, it turned. Inside the dusty room was another chest, larger, with a piece of paper taped on top. "Do not open out of curiosity. Open only if your heart truly wishes to bring someone home." Mr. Mao knelt down, hands trembling. Finally, he opened the lid. Inside was a faded little girl's dress, a clumsily sewn cloth doll, and an old photo. In it, Mrs. Ban, still young, held a baby girl, standing in front of that very house. No one said a word, just the wind, the rustling leaves, and little Sen standing behind him softly whispered, "Dad, the little girl is back. She's been standing behind you all this time. She's crying, but she's not sad." Mr. Mao didn't turn around. He placed his hand on the photo and whispered, "If you're my sister, then from now on, I'll remember you for Grandma." That night, in his dream, he saw Mrs. Ban sitting under the eaves, gently brushing the hair of a little girl. She said softly, "I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to keep you. But tonight, I believe you finally have a name." After opening that final chest and learning of Mrs. Ban's long-lost daughter, Mr. Mao felt a great weight lift from his chest. All the things never spoken, all the memories carefully buried, had at last been reached, not to expose, but to release with love. In the final days of the year, the skies over Kok Hai were clear, the air was crisp, and the scent of kitchen smoke and bon tet mixed with the sound of bamboo brooms brushing the yard, stirring memories of the old seasons when his mother would hold his hand and walk him through the years. Mr. Mao rebuilt the side room beside the house, the place where Mrs. Ban once sat to mend clothes, light the fire, and wrap banana leaves for bon tet. The old thatched roof was replaced with new straw, clean and simple, but he kept the wooden frame his mother had once crafted. On the wall, he rehung an old photo, Mrs. Ban sitting among her grandchildren, holding a cup of tea, her gaze warm and kind. On New Year's Eve, the family sat around the boiling pot of bon. Outside, the old sao tree dropped golden fruit. One rolled all the way to the doorstep. Sen picked it up and suddenly said, "Grandma was just sitting outside." "Dad," she smiled. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were really bright. Mr. Mao didn't respond. He just looked past the old kitchen roof, where the moonlight fell gently, illuminating a thin ribbon of smoke, not thick like fog, not fast like wind, just soft and floating, like the hem of a woman's dye. Still sitting there, gently warming the world with silent love. On the morning of the first day of the new year, Mr. Mao opened the main door and washed the front yard with a decoction of soapberry water, just like his mother had taught him. On the altar, the candle burned for exactly 3 hours before fading out, no flicker, no tilt. The incense smoke rose tall, straight, and clear, like a quiet goodbye. He pulled out his journal and wrote down everything he had experienced, from the muddy footprints on rainy nights to the whispers in the wind. The unborn souls, the chicken cage, the old rain, the photo by the sao tree. He titled the notebook, "A Prophecy in the Rain," and placed it beside his mother's photo, like a silent offering of gratitude. That night, for the first time in years, Mr. Mao slept deeply. No dreams, no voices, no shadow waiting at the edge of the yard. Only the faintest breeze, carrying the scent of Wanao. So the story of A Prophecy in the Rain comes to an end. If this series has stirred something deep in your heart, please leave a comment and share your thoughts with us. Right finger, and if you'd like to keep listening to stories rooted in everyday life, emotional, a little spiritual, but deeply human, please hit subscribe and turn on the bell notification bell so you won't miss the next video. Red Heart, thank you for staying with us from the very first chapter, all the way to this final moment. See you again on a new journey.